What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Form Check Friday. This is the video series where we take viewer-submitted videos received at the email address formcheckfriday@gmail.com. We use this fancy random number generator from Google, and we pick some people out. We look at their videos, we draw some stuff on them. We try to help everybody become better lifters, become a bit more efficient, or at least understand some of the things that most coaches will look at trying to modify to make people better. So thank you for joining us today, and we're going to dive right in with our first submission from Deborah. Now, Deborah says he's going to be competing in February. This was actually a very recent email 3 days ago, so you're welcome, Deborah. Good luck on your meet. Using your program, he says, I'd like to get my form checked. When lowering the weight, I feel like sometimes I actually do shift on my toes and my heels rise up. Do you have any suggestions for that? I try to keep the bar over mid-foot, but it still happens. If you have any other suggestions, I'd love to hear them. All right, so Deborah, let us take a look. I think the cue, keep the bar over mid-foot, can be kind of confusing because, like, what does that mean, right? What does that actually mean to anybody? It's a tough cue because it isn't very descriptive, I don't think. So these pulls here actually look fabulous. They look fantastic here. Generally speaking, when we have the fault of ending up too far out on the toes, and he did say when lowering the weight, which made me think this was squatting. So if you're having issues when lowering the weight deadlifting, just don't worry about it. Honestly, if you're gonna compete, it doesn't matter how you lower the bar, as long as your hands stay on it. That one is very important. Looks to me like things look pretty good. There's one thing that's kind of happening on a number of these reps, and that is this right here. As you start, we're having to pull that bar in closer. You can see the bar shift right here, that horizontal shift. So definitely want to be setting up with the bar a little bit closer and not starting with the bar out in front of you. That can put you on your toes on the way up, which is much more important than anything that happens on the way down. But there's this very slight roll as you initiate the lift, and let's see if we can capture it here. So he pulls himself into a really nice position here, and then the bar has to roll to reach him, and it doesn't start rolling until after he's initiated the lift. If we just watch that again. So try to get that bar nice and close and set so that the bar isn't moving after you initiate your lift. Other than that, man, these look really, really good. Your shoulder blade positioning is great. Your back angle is great. Looks like you're pulling yourself into a really strong position, pulling the slack out of the bar for the most part. So, yeah. All told, really solid lifts, man. A lot of things done very right, and best of luck at your first competition. We'll cross Deborah off the list here and move on to our next, and his name is Paul. So Paul says he also included a video of his third deadlift so Dylan can see that he deadlifted without straps. Apparently he's tuned into our live stream at some point, and maybe Dylan gave him some shit for using straps or something, which is kind of funny because Dylan uses straps for everything. But anyways, let's take a look. He wanted to submit a squat, it looks like. So Paul, let's take a look at this squat here. He's obviously doing it in competition, so we're gonna cut some of this setup. There we go. So let's see how you are once he gets onto the bar. A little bit hyped up, we can tell. Getting his back set nice and tight. Pretty efficient walkout, not too much I'd complain about there. A little bit of a shrug before he starts, which is not something I always recommend. But all told, honestly, man, that's a really solid looking squat. I don't really see much wrong with that. We're getting a little bit kind of pulled out of position, but I'm assuming this is a third attempt at a meet. So the one thing I would actually work on here is I would work on the trunk tightness as we unrack the bar. Now, if you watch as Paul unracks the bar here, you can see the bar just kind of bounce around on his back and his shoulders shrug up and come back down. And I think some of that stuff can be a little bit detrimental to maintaining or creating as much tightness as possible out of the rack. Once we get back here, it looks like we get pretty settled in. Like I said, the walkout was pretty good, pretty efficient, so I'm not too worried about that. Let's see how the actual squat goes. I don't think there's much to pick apart here, honestly. So things look pretty tight. We're in a good position into and out of the bottom, a little bit of a sticking point, but a third attempt squat, man, that's normal. That stuff's gonna happen. So the only thing I would work on is the unrack and trying to make sure that as you set into that bar and by the time you unrack, none of this is moving. The bar is staying glued into your back. It's part of your back by that point. We shouldn't be moving around during the unrack. All right, next up, we have a video submission from Andar. Now Andar says, hello Bryce and Calgary Barbell team. Here's my bench press footage with 88% of my 1RM and my usual grip. He says it's kind of narrow, but this is my first time trying. Oh, sorry, his usual grip is narrow, but this is the first time trying wider and more of a bulldog grip. And when we talk about bulldog grip, if this is the bar, a more sort of neutral grip is gonna be here. A more bulldog grip is gonna be turning the bar in the hand. So you can see the difference there. More neutral grip, we're gonna be like this, and a more bulldog grip, we're internally rotating at the shoulder, and we're ending up with the bar in a bit of a different position in the hand, which in a lot of cases lends itself well to a wider grip bench press. Let's see how this looks here. Andar, we'll take a look at your bench, man. So a little bit wider, a little bit of a bulldog grip here. Looks good, man. Getting a little bit inconsistent past rep 1. That was actually a much better rep. Again, we're tighter there. I do think we're collapsing a little bit on the chest during the pause. So this first rep looks really good. So first rep, we lower the bar, everything looks good and in line. The chest is coming up to meet the bar. The pause is relatively slight, and then we press back up. The second one, the bar really falls during the eccentric. So we're loosening in the back, we're loosening just in general through a lot of the pressing muscles, and the bar is kind of falling on us, which leads to a bit of an inconsistent press, but honestly, he gets away with it here. This is 88%, and I think he's hitting this for a set of 4, so that's pretty damn good. Yeah, the one thing I would be conscious of is the control on the eccentric on this second rep here. Pretty good there, good bar path. Now when we talk about bar path, we can see pretty well here that Andar's bar path goes back and then up. And that is generally what we coach as sort of an ideal bar path. So we come down, back, and then up. Can you guys catch that? Back and then up. Back and then up. Again, back and up. So the only thing I would work on is trying to create a little bit more tightness and leg drive through the movement. So what's happening is as the bar comes down, we're relaxing through the leg drive a little bit and then using like a jolt of leg drive to press up off the bench. So if we watch his lower body here, as we initiate the press, there's like a real push and sort of shimmy and shake out of the lower body. And what I would generally try to do is create more tension through the legs the whole time, and just imagine you're kind of scooting yourself up the bench, pushing yourself up the bench the whole time, which is gonna help bring the chest up to the bar and create a lot more consistent tightness throughout. When we use this like jolty kind of leg drive, it makes for some inconsistent reps sometimes. So we wanna be aware of that and potentially play with different styles of leg drive to find out what's going to be the most efficient for you specifically. Because what's good for somebody else isn't always good for you. And again, with these tips, with these sort of things that I give people to think about in this series, it's not necessarily that do this and it's gonna make you 100% better. I'm trying to give people things to think about and different parts of the lift to analyze, and my best 2 cents as to what we can do to try to make you a more efficient lifter. You may try some of these tips and you might be like, screw that guy. No, that doesn't work better. And that's okay. I'm okay to admit that. But I do generally tend to give pretty good advice, and at the very least can see things that are inconsistent rep to rep, and give some ideas about things that we can consider to try to be better. Next one's from Mehmet. He's from Turkey. He says he's been powerlifting for 9 months now, 25, and yeah, let's take a look. Not a huge amount of background on Mehmet there, but let's see what we got here. So we look a little loose and uncomfortable in that bottom position to start with. It's a very, what have I done? There we go. So a very kind of jolty start to the lift where we're just loosening and kind of falling into the bottom. I would like for you to practice some tempo squats and work on getting used to guiding that eccentric portion of the movement rather than just kind of falling down to the bottom. And again here, nice tight setup. And we have this kind of jolty start to it, fall down, definitely not hitting depth there, which is another thing. I think even just psychologically, you seem a bit afraid of the bottom position, and that's not a slight against you. That's not something that's irregular, abnormal. Most people struggle with the bottom position in the squat. The trick is to try to get comfortable with the bottom position of the squat, how that feels, what it should feel like on the way into and out of the bottom position, and things like tempo squats and pause squats and pin squats, which doesn't look like you have the rack for, but tempo and pause squats for sure. Practice those, get used to the bottom position, get comfortable in the bottom position, and practice, like I said, guiding yourself into the bottom, as well as making sure you're hitting competition depth every time. Because that second rep, I don't think is there. That first rep actually looks a little bit high too, unfortunately. So in order to work on the depth, definitely work on the bottom position. Work on being more comfortable, being more stable, being more tight. And that's gonna help you get used to how you drive out of the bottom. This to me doesn't look like a bad squat, it just looks like an inexperienced squat. It just looks like you're learning. So don't take it the wrong way. You know, I squatted high for a long time when I first started too. But just practice that bottom position, work on your depth, and I think you got a lot more in you. A lot better squatting in you for sure. All right, that's Mehmet. This last one comes from Dustin. Now, Dustin's email says that he's looking to get a form check for squats. This is 345 pounds on his last set of 4. He's currently 4 weeks into a powerlifting program, but feels like his knees pull in too much. He mentioned that he had an ACL surgery in January of 2018, which causes his hips to shoot up behind him. So let's take a look, Dustin. Let's see if we can pick out anything that might help you keep the sort of pacing of the knee and hip extension similar out of the bottom and avoid that knee crash. Let's take a look here. So pretty good. Again, doesn't look like a bad squat, just looks like an inexperienced squat. So I think starting with the unrack, we're really overextended there, and I don't think we're quite as tight into the bar as we could be. So I want you to, from this point, you're very overextended, and I want you to think about bringing the ribs down on top of your abs. It's a very slight thing, but think about clamping the ribs down on top of the abs, keeping that same tension in the upper back. It's good what you're doing there, but the extension is carrying through to the rest of the back. So the extension is carrying through. What we want is for this to feel extended and for us to sort of pull the ribs down in the front so that essentially what we're getting is downward force on sort of both sides of the trunk, clamping the ribs down on top of the diaphragm, breathing big into the belly and whole torso, and just creating a lot more tension and pressure throughout the trunk, which I think might be one of the sort of biggest things and maybe sort of a keystone thing to think about with your squats is getting that sort of bracing to feel better. And when we say bracing, that's what we're referring to is sort of how we're orienting the trunk and the tightness we're creating throughout during the duration of the squats. Bottom position actually looks pretty good, might be a little bit loose. And I think we're just getting a little rushed out of the bottom, a little rushed into the bottom. Again, maybe a little bit of sort of mental and physical discomfort with the bottom position. So this rack actually looks like you could do some pin squats, which might be a good thing for you to get used to that bottom position. And pin squats are really good because they create this momentary lapse of tension between the bar and your back, this slight disconnect that allows you to really focus on that positioning out of the bottom. So if you find yourself where your hips are kind of shooting up and you're getting into that squat morning pattern, which I don't think you are to a large extent here, I think you're doing a really good job. But if you are noticing that, pin squats can be a great tool in teaching you to really kind of keep the knees forward, keep that weight distributed evenly through the feet. We might be lacking a little on the forefoot. Knee crash to me looks pretty subtle. I mean, what the cool thing here is we essentially have two angles. I might try a bit of a narrower stance. A lot of times when we get knee crash, it's one of those things that if we bring the stance in a little bit, we eliminate some of the demand on the hips for that external rotation. And a lot of times when the knees crash, it's because we've put too much external rotation demands and the knees are trying to come back to where they're stronger or more comfortable. So by bringing the stance in, that allows us to essentially not push the knees out too far, which means they don't have to come in. They stay in track the whole time. We don't have that inconsistency, that shift, that change between. Take another look at this really quick. Yeah, I think those are my big few cues there. So I hope very much that what we've done here today has given some of our viewers something to think about, some different ways to conceptualize or to think about the lift, some cues, hopefully that they can apply to their own lifting. And for those featured, I really do hope that helps you. If anybody wants to submit for Form Check Friday, make sure to go ahead and send those emails to formcheckfriday@gmail.com. We do these every Friday. We also live stream once a week. So head over to twitch.tv/Calgary Barbell, and we usually have our next stream scheduled there. You can see it if you scroll down a little bit. And that's about it for us. If you like the video, hit that thumbs up. Make sure you stay tuned for more fantastic lifting content. We work very hard on what we put on this channel. So go check out some of our other stuff. See you guys in the next video.